Hello everyone, my name is Nick Luczak and I'm here to talk to you today about automation in our infrastructure industry. Now, to put it in some context, infrastructure is a huge industry which is very important to our American society today. Last year in 2016, the federal government instituted a policy which allowed $88 billion to be invested into our infrastructure. That includes jobs, road repairs, and telephone line repairs. Furthermore, there's 14.2 million Americans employed in our infrastructure industries. There's 2.7 million miles of road paved, 2.4 million miles of pipe laid, that includes sewers and such as like canals, 5.7 million miles of telephone wire, and 140,000 miles of railroad tracks, as well as 19,000 different airports. And 53% of all of our imports come on boat. Now, as you can see, infrastructure is a huge industry and is very important to our American society. But some would like to see robots take over the most important job of our infrastructure, and that is building and maintaining our American infrastructure. In their vision, they see robots controlling most stuff and humans just operating at a more management level. I say that's a terrible idea. Reasons we should not automate is because there would be system-wide distrust across society in these new automated infrastructure systems. There would be a massive amount of inherent job loss and a huge decrease in blue-collar work ethic, which, as I'll talk about, is very important to our society in general. First, public distrust. Public distrust is best defined by Merriam-Webster as the public, meaning society, mostly civilians in general, and distrust as having a lack of ability or loyalty to that of a system. And what I'm going to talk about is Maltz and Shiner's academic study about faulty systems and how even if one small portion is not working properly, an entire system will be at risk for lack of distrust or lack of trust. And I'll also talk about a historic example for how just one small incident in America's nuclear power can ruin an entire system. First, faulty systems. In their study from 2003, Maltz and Shiner did a study in which former naval pilots and current commercial pilots were placed in a simulator in which there was one small faulty system and the rest of the system was completely accurate. As they went through and had to fly through the plane, they realized that this one faulty system was inaccurate, but then began to lack trust in the rest of the system. This study is very important because it proves inherently that even if one small portion of a system is not correct or is inaccurate or has some fault in it, an entire system will be distrusted by the people who are operating it and using it. Another example was the nuclear power distrust that occurred around the 1980s. All the way up until 1950, the United States had been investing billions of dollars into research. That's according to the United States fiscal budget from back then. But in 1979, the 3 Mile Island Reactor 3 had a meltdown. Very small, very minor. Nobody was hurt. There was very little fallout. But American investment in those industries declined immensely afterwards. The Department of Energy now even notices that the reactors that are still work totally fine are being slowly shut down across the states due to a lack of trust in the public and just wariness in general. Also, the President's report from 1980 and a New York Times article today talks about how the public did not feel trustworthy around those new technologies, even though they were completely safe. Now, job loss. Job loss is something we talk about every day in American politics, but specifically in an industry such as huge as infrastructure, it would be deadly. I want to talk about Padero's study about the link between infrastructure and employment, and then what the economic effects would be if such an employment was to occur. So first, Miguel Padero in 2008 did a study about the infrastructure growth between in Paris and employment rate. What he found was that when employment rate went up, it was due to infrastructure growth. When there was infrastructure declining and removal, employment went directly down. The importance here is that it directly correlates between infrastructure growth and employment growth. It establishes an important connection which we could see with unemployment effect. Back in the New Deal, FDR and the Democratic Party released a series of benefits that would help those who are unemployed. If 14.2 million people were going to be unemployed by an automated system from removal of infrastructure growth, we would see an estimated $1 trillion be added to the federal budget from unemployment benefits alone, not to mention Social Security or Medicare as well. This would impact the U.S. economy tremendously and would add massive amounts to the fiscal budget, which could lead to possible inflation and ruin the rest of our economy. Next, a decrease in blue-collar work ethic. Blue-collar work ethic is seen as one of the most important society traits for those in the lower class. It is the drive that drives small people in impoverished communities to eventually become something greater. Blue-collar work ethic is seen also in our infrastructure industries. The way President Obama put it in his 2011 speech to construction workers was that blue-collar work ethic is the most important aspect for construction workers. There's so much work to be done, and it's pointless for them to be unemployed. Now, why this would decrease would be mostly why this could decrease would also, in a study from Donovan in 2013 for The Atlantic, we found that if one segment of society had a severe job loss, we would also see a severe decrease in work ethic in other areas, in similar blue-collar areas. It's very important because if we laid off 14.2 million people in infrastructure, it would likely hurt other areas of society. Now, in opposition, we see Thompson's article, one of the stimulus articles from The Atlantic, called "A World Without Work." And in this case, we see a utopia where nobody has to work, but this is impossible because, like Richard Nixon said in the stimulus article, in the stimulus speech, work ethic is the most important aspect of American society. People who are lackadaisical and just play off the system, society can't have those people. Basically, a utopia where no work is allowed or even encouraged would be impossible due to a lack of implementation and an inability of society to function, even if robots were providing everything. So, in conclusion, infrastructure should not be replaced by robots or any sort of automation. Instead, we should focus on making as many jobs as possible in the infrastructure industry. Due to what Padero found in his Paris study, if infrastructure increases, jobs will also increase. This is the important link because if we weren't to do that, blue-collar work ethic would likely be ruined and system-wide distrust across the new automated infrastructure system would plummet to the ground. Thank you.
Joseph, maybe pause it just for a second. Give